The pain you've been carrying was never supposed to last this long. At least that's what you thought. You prayed. You waited. You believed things would get better. Yet somehow, the struggle remained. And lately, you've been asking a question you rarely say out loud. Why is this happening to me? Why does the hurt keep returning? Why does the healing feel so slow? Why does it seem like everyone else is moving forward while you're still carrying the same burden? If you've asked those questions, God wants you to hear this tonight. Your pain is not meaningless. Your suffering is not being ignored. And the season that feels like it's breaking, you may actually be shaping something greater than you can see. Because there is a purpose hidden inside this struggle. And before this message ends, you'll understand why the pain you've been fighting may be leading you towards something better than you ever imagined. Maybe you're tired of being strong, tired of telling people you're okay when you're not, tired of carrying a weight that nobody else seems to understand. Because prolonged pain changes a person. At first, you fight it. You tell yourself things will get better soon. You stay hopeful. You keep believing. But when the days turn into months, and the months turn into years, something inside you begins to wear down. Not because you're weak, because you're human. You wake up every morning hoping today will feel different. Yet the same burden is still there. The same ache, the same unanswered questions, the same struggle you've carried for far too long. And sometimes the hardest part isn't even the pain itself. It's the uncertainty, not knowing when it will end, not knowing why it happened, not knowing what God is doing through it. There are nights when the house is quiet, but your mind isn't. You stare at the ceiling, replaying conversations, replaying mistakes, replaying disappointments, wondering if things would be different if you had made another choice, wondering if your best days are already behind you. You try not to let others see it. You still smile. You still show up. You still do what needs to be done. But deep inside, there are wounds that never seem to fully heal. And sometimes you wonder if anyone truly understands how exhausted you've become. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying invisible pain for too long. The kind that leaves you feeling isolated even when you're surrounded by people. Because suffering has a way of making you feel alone. It whispers that nobody understands, that nobody sees your tears, that nobody knows how hard you've fought just to make it through another day. But God sees it all, every silent cry, every moment of disappointment, every prayer spoken through tears, every battle you've fought behind closed doors. Nothing has escaped his attention, not one painful moment, not one lonely night, not one tear that fell when nobody else was watching. And here's what you've been missing. The pain may have convinced you that your story is falling apart, but God sees a story that is still unfolding, a story that is not finished, a story that still contains chapters you haven't reached yet. Because what feels like the end of hope to you may only be the beginning of something God is preparing through this very struggle. And that is why God wants you to know something tonight. You have never suffered alone, not for a single moment, even during the seasons when His presence felt distant, even during the prayers that seemed unanswered, even during the days when you wondered if heaven had gone silent. He was there. He was there when you sat alone, trying to hold yourself together. He was there when tears rolled down your face and nobody knew. He was there when you felt abandoned by people you trusted. He was there when disappointment hit harder than you expected. And He was there during the moments when you almost gave up. The pain may have made Him feel far away, but feelings do not tell the whole story. Because God's presence is not measured by what you feel in a moment. His presence remains even in the darkest valleys, even in the longest nights, even in the seasons you do not understand. Sometimes we expect God to show up through instant answers, instant healing, instant breakthroughs, but often He shows up through something quieter, the strength to keep going, the courage to face another day, the peace that somehow appears in the middle of chaos. Looking back, you may realize there were moments you should have completely fallen apart, moments that should have broken you, moments that should have destroyed your hope, yet somehow you kept moving forward. Not perfectly, not without tears, but you kept going. That wasn't an accident. That was God's hand sustaining you when you didn't even realize it. And this changes everything, because if God has carried you this far, He is not about to leave you now. If He has remained faithful through the hardest parts of your journey, He will remain faithful through the rest of it. The pain is real. The struggle is real. But God's presence is real too. And His presence has been working in places your eyes could not see, strengthening you, protecting you, preparing you. Because the story isn't simply about what you've lost. It's about what God is building through the loss. And before you can understand the purpose of the pain, you must first understand the battle that has been taking place beneath the surface this entire time. The greatest battle of this season has not been the pain itself. It has been what the pain has been trying to make you believe. Because suffering doesn't just affect your circumstances. It attacks your perspective. It whispers questions into your mind when you're already tired. Questions like, why bother hoping anymore? What's the point of praying? Will anything ever change? Little by little, pain tries to convince you that your future will look exactly like your present. That healing is for other people. That breakthrough happens to everyone except you. That your story is somehow different. But that is the hidden battle. Not just enduring the struggle, enduring the lies that often come with it. Because prolonged suffering has a way of distorting what you see. You begin looking at your life through the lens of disappointment, through the lens of loss, through the lens of fear, and eventually, you stop expecting good things altogether. Not because you want to, but because disappointment feels safer than hope. If you don't expect anything, you can't be hurt again. If you don't believe for anything, you can't be let down. At least that's what pain tries to teach you. But God never called you to build your future around your wounds. He never intended your suffering to become your identity. The enemy wants you to see your pain as proof that God has forgotten you. God wants you to see your survival as proof that He has been carrying you. That's a very different story. And here's what you've been missing. The reason this battle has felt so intense may be because something valuable is being formed inside you. Strength that comfort could never produce. Wisdom that ease could never teach. Compassion that success alone could never create. Pain has been trying to define you, but God has been developing you. Pain has been trying to make you quit, but God has been teaching you how to endure. Pain has been telling you that this is the end, but God has been preparing you for a beginning you cannot yet see. Think about that. What if the struggle you've been fighting isn't evidence that your life is falling apart? What if it is evidence that God is building something deeper than temporary comfort? Because sometimes the greatest transformation happens in the very season you wish you could escape. And once you begin to see that, everything starts to change, not necessarily around you at first, but within you, and that is where the turning point begins. And this is the moment where your perspective begins to change, not because the pain suddenly disappears, not because every question is finally answered, but because you start to realize that your suffering may have been producing something greater than you imagined. For so long, you've been asking, why is this happening to me? But what if there is another question worth asking? What is this pain preparing me for? Because when God is building something valuable, He often works beneath the surface first, in places nobody can see, including you. The person you are today is not the same person you were before this struggle began. You may not always notice it, but you've grown. You've become stronger than you realize, more compassionate, more resilient, more aware of what truly matters. The very things you once prayed for may be developing inside you through this season. And here's what you've been missing. The pain was never the destination. It was part of the journey. A difficult part, a painful part, but not the final part. God is not leading you toward destruction. He is leading you toward transformation. Every tear, every setback, every lonely night, every unanswered question, none of it has been wasted. God has been weaving purpose through places that felt completely broken. And one day, you'll look back and see connections you cannot see today. You'll understand why certain doors closed, why certain delays happened, why certain struggles lasted longer than you wanted. Not because the pain was good, but because God brought something good out of it. And that changes everything. Because if pain has a purpose, then suffering is no longer meaningless. If God is still working, then hope is still alive. And if hope is still alive, then your future is bigger than your current struggle. The chapter you're living now is not the whole story. There is more ahead, more healing, more peace, more restoration. And before God reveals what is ahead of you, He wants to remind you of something the pain may have caused you to forget: who you truly are. One of the hardest things about prolonged suffering is that it slowly tries to rewrite the way you see yourself. At first, the pain is something you experience, but if it lasts long enough, it can begin to feel like something you are. You stop saying, "I'm going through a difficult season," and without realizing it, you start believing, "Maybe this is just who I am." Broken, damaged, unlucky, forgotten, defined by loss, defined by disappointment, defined by everything that went wrong. But God wants to interrupt those thoughts tonight, because your pain is part of your story. It is not your identity. The struggle you faced is real. The wounds are real. The tears are real. But they do not determine your worth. They do not determine your future. And they certainly do not determine how God sees you. God does not look at you and see a failure. He does not look at you and see someone permanently damaged by life. He sees someone who kept moving forward when it would have been easier to quit. Someone who continued showing up despite the weight they were carrying. Someone who survived battles that most people know nothing about. And that matters, because strength is not the absence of pain. Strength is continuing despite it. You may feel weak sometimes. You may feel exhausted. You may feel like you've reached the end of your ability to keep going. But the fact that you're still here proves something powerful. You have endured more than you give yourself credit for. More disappointment, more uncertainty, more heartbreak, more waiting. And yet you are still standing. Not perfectly, not without scars, but standing, and God sees every scar differently than you do. You see evidence of what hurt you. God sees evidence of what couldn't destroy you. You see wounds. God sees survival. You see loss. God sees growth. You see the chapters that broke your heart. God sees the person those chapters helped shape. And here's what you've been missing. The pain was never meant to convince you that you are less. It was meant to reveal a strength you never knew you possessed. Because your identity is not found in what happened to you. Your identity is found in the one who has carried you through it. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not beyond healing. And you are not destined to remain in this season forever. In fact, the very pain that tried to break your confidence may soon become the testimony that restores your hope. Because God is not finished with your story, and what He is preparing next may be greater than anything this season has taken from you. One day, you'll look back on this season with different eyes, not because you'll suddenly be grateful for every painful moment, but because you'll finally see what God was doing through it. The pain that felt endless will no longer be the center of the story. The growth will, the strength will, the person you became will, because God is able to bring beauty from brokenness and purpose, from suffering. What feels heavy today will not always feel this way. Healing is coming, peace is coming, and the lessons born from this struggle will carry you into a future you cannot yet see. Your pain was never sent to destroy you. It was preparing you, shaping you, positioning you for something greater. So don't let this chapter convince you that the story is over. The breakthrough is not found in the pain itself. It's found in what God is producing through it. And what He is producing is leading you toward a life stronger, Visa, and more beautiful than you can imagine. So tonight, release the burden of believing your pain has been meaningless. God has seen every tear, heard every prayer, and carried you through every difficult step. What hurts today will not define your tomorrow. May peace settle over your heart. May hope rise within your spirit. And may you trust that even now, God is turning your pain into purpose. Your story is not ending in suffering. It is moving toward healing, restoration, and something better than you can see today.